Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Raj Sabha TV. Today we will bring to you the Citizenship Amendment Bill. To discuss the issue, I have with me Mr. Upamanyu Hazarika, Senior Advocate, and Mr. Vikramjit Banerjee, Advocate. Now for the highlights. The Citizenship Amendment Bill 2016 empowers and simplifies the stringent criteria granting citizenship to a specific group. Now the proposals will enable them to apply for citizenship with or without valid travel documents. And existing citizenship law prohibits illegal migrants from acquiring Indian citizenship. Hindus, Jains, Sikhs, Buddhists, Parsis and Christian community members who are minorities in Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh may become Indian citizens more easily. The Citizenship Amendment Bill 2016 empowers and simplifies the stringent criteria granting citizenship to this group. Now, the proposals will enable them to apply for citizenship with or without valid travel documents.
In order to ease the stringent process for granting of citizenship to members of Hindu, Jain, Sikh, Buddhist, Parsi and Christian community, the government has proposed an amendment to the existing citizenship law. As per the proposals, migrants from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh will only be eligible. The present law states that citizenship by naturalization is possible if the applicant has lived in India for 12 years.
There are certain minority communities in the neighboring countries of Bangladesh, Pakistan and Afghanistan. And those minority communities who can in some manner seek to derive some roots in India and therefore claim to be Indians, it gives them an opportunity to be able to profess and access that citizenship of India.
The Citizenship Amendment Bill 2016 amends the existing law to reduce the number of years of stay from 12 years to 7 years to provide citizenship by naturalization. In effect, Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, Parsi and Christian from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh living in India will not be treated as illegal migrants and will be granted citizenship. The bill also proposes to empower the Centre to cancel the registration of Overseas Citizen of India (OCI) cardholders for violating the law of the land.
The idea is that they should be given the citizenship so that they are able to live at par with the other citizens. Their children are able to get education. After education, they get the employment. Once they get the citizenship, they will be able to live with dignity. Even the places where they are living, they will get some more attention. Now they must be living in some slums or some other areas.
There are wide grounds for cancelling OCI registration under the 1955 Act. An Overseas Citizen of India (OCI) cardholder's registration may be cancelled if he violates a law for which he is sentenced to imprisonment for 2 years or more. And within 5 years of his OCI registration, the bill adds another ground for cancelling OCI registration, which is violation of any law of the country by an OCI. This means that even offences with lesser penalties or which have been committed after 5 years of registration could be covered under the bill.
Experts believe that these people are getting access to their requirement from the resources of the country in an unofficial manner. Benefits like multiple entry, multi-purpose lifelong visa to visit India are provided to an overseas citizen and even provided additional rights to a larger category of people. Malhotra with cameraman Munish for Rajya Sabha Television.
OCI registration will be cancelled in case there is any violation of any law. So that's a generic provision, which essentially means that it can be expanded and a lot of things come into this, and any violation could now lead to cancellation of OCI registration. But I would like to know from you, what was the need for the present state to bring in this amendment and specifically provide for the specific groups for them to get citizenship in India?
I think the thinking behind it was very clear. You know, we live in a subcontinent which is surrounded by states which have over the period of time become extremely strongly religious and fanatical, which has led to religious minorities being not only discriminated against, but becoming impossible for them to live in these states. So India being a pluralist country and being always, in many ways, the mother country of the entire South Asia, it was expected that they would have a place of refuge and they would be broadly accommodated in the Indian framework so that they would be safe. I think this was the broad thinking behind having this.
And also, is it also the thought that the minority communities, and an acknowledgement of the fact that the minority communities in these three specific countries who have been named,
yes,
the laws are not tolerant enough to allow them to exist the way they would like to exist?
I think,
is that an acknowledgement?
I think that is one, that is very clear as to what is happening, but more importantly, what we can see around us, it's not only, even if the laws, let me put it this way, even if the laws do or have a semblance of protection to minorities, on the ground, it is actually not working. We've seen that what is happening in Bangladesh, which is supposedly, you know, we say there's a secular government.
Correct,
we
correct,
also say there are laws on the ground which protects religious minorities, but there's been horrendous crimes against minorities, religious minorities, and which is continuous. So where do these people go? What other option do they have? They only have an option to come to India.
Upamanyu, what's the fallout? This may be a well-meaning law to protect essentially the people who have emerged from this landmass and of various denominations. It may be to protect them, right? But what could be the fallout of this?
Yes.
And how could it go, be interpreted in a completely different manner? What's the counterpoint?
Well, I would put it this way. You see, the intent, I would not look at the intent so much, because I think, I mean, given what is happening in the neighborhood, there would be a certain degree of concern we would have, and therefore. But the whole issues, and what I'm primarily concerned is with Northeast India, and particularly Assam. Because there the problem is that we are ourselves, citizens in that part of the country are headed, indigenous ones, are headed towards becoming a minority. And that is on account of large-scale infiltration from Bangladesh. Now, when we are amending a citizenship bill, I would think that the overriding priority has to be given to the citizens of your own country, or those who are indigenous particularly, and who are on their way to becoming a minority, rather than, you know, for giving priority before us to citizens of other countries who are minorities in other countries. So, because the implications for us are horrendous. I mean, I just give.
Could you come again? I mean, the ones who are already in Northeast,
yeah,
those citizens who are already citizens, how can that be clubbed with this provision? I need to understand that.
You are. Because see, we've been facing a huge influx from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, as is evident, and largely that's a Muslim migrant population. And the population trends are such that if the Muslim population was 24.56 in 1971, it became 30.9% in 2001.
But doesn't include Muslims.
May I come to that? There is also the other part of it, because you see, there are cultural issues, there are language issues there. So, you know, and we have 50 odd indigenous communities in Assam alone.
Correct.
So when you bring in a whole influx of other, that sort of upsets the balance. It's
okay.
You see, it's not a question of, and studies say by 2040 we are going to become a minority. The Hindus, if you put it in a religious context, indigenous become a minority in 2040. The point is today that what is the priority of the government? The priority of the government has to be first to address the concerns and the issue of identity, which its own citizens are facing. Now, there is a particular issue here which is of concern to us. One, I would say that, I mean, whosoever the government wants, the central government was a part of the BJP manifesto, we cannot have an issue with that. They want to give, they can. The point is, we should not bear the burden, Northeast, because we've already borne the burden of already a large number of migrant population. One. Two, most importantly, there is another aspect to it, and which the Citizenship Bill requires amendment, particularly in the Northeast context. You are aware that today we are in Assam, we are undergoing an identification exercise of foreigners after 45 years. 71 is the cutoff date.
Yeah.
Now, according to the UPA government alone, there were 50 lakh infiltrators after in 2001, which is 20% of your population. Which means all those, they will be in the ongoing exercise, all those who come after 71 will be may or may not be identified as non-citizens. But the difficulty is that those children who are born of them, they acquire citizenship by birth. Now that is where the Citizenship Bill needs to address. That is what I am saying. That if you are giving priority, you have to give priority to your own citizens who, by virtue of these loopholes. See, today, anybody born in India until 2004.
I get your point. I get your point. That the migrants who've been living there since 1971 illegally, even if they are from a minority, let's say a Muslim community, their children have already acquired
citizenship. That is the loophole needs to be plugged.
And that loophole needs to be plugged.
We've given, I am a convener of an organization, Forum Against Infiltration. We've already given a representation to the Select Committee that this is one primary issue which concerns us, because that is sufficient to the number of children which are born, and we've got.
But then that means you go to the original constitution and amend it.
No, you don't need to. You see, in Assam, after the Assam movement, you amended the Citizenship Act by saying that until 71, those who came in will be granted citizenship. For the rest of India, it is 19 July 1948. For Assam, it is 25th of March 1971. But even after 25th of March 1971, there are 50 lakh infiltrators who came in 2001, which is 65 lakhs today, 20% of your population. They have given birth to a large number of... And the birth rates in the neighboring districts, and which have Muslim majority districts and the middle Assam districts, they have huge growth rates, 20 to 24%, whereas for the rest of the state it's 10 to 12%. So that itself shows that the number of children who would be by birth, and that's a fact which needs to be investigated, numbers we have to fix, but that is sufficient to turn us into a minority.
Correct. Anything that you would like to add, how that can be done and quickly?
And so that can be done, so when you are addressing the amendment, when you are looking at an amendment to the Citizenship Bill, so why don't you amend that provision giving them citizenship by birth, saying that post-71 migrants will also be foreigners as well as their children?
Their progeny. Right.
No, I think this is a question which Mr. Hazarika and his organization has been raising. That's their that's their agenda.
But is that the right way to go? Should it be prevented?
I'm sure that may be their agenda. And then maybe
is it possible to do it?
No, I have no comments on that at the present moment, because that's not what is the thrust of this discussion, which is on the Citizenship Bill and the amendment there, and what's there on the table. I think this is something which let the government consider, and if the government thinks this is an issue worth considering and important enough, and which from Mr. Hazarika's perspective and from the people who Mr. Hazarika represents, I think that it's something which may be considered by the government. But at the present moment, this discussion, I think, is limited to the Citizenship Bill, and I think Mr. Hazarika also agrees that it's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
As long as his caveat, it seems to be that as long as the burden is not borne by northeastern states,
original inhabitants,
states. And I think that it can be that something can be done on that.
Coming up, existing citizenship law prohibits illegal migrants from acquiring Indian citizenship. Welcome back. The existing citizenship law prohibits illegal migrants from acquiring Indian citizenship. But now things may change. Now the bill amends the law to provide that illegal migrants of certain denominations will not be considered illegal migrants. The Citizenship Act 1955 is the exhaustive law relating to citizenship in India.
The existing law allows a person to apply for citizenship by naturalization if he meets certain qualifications. One of these is that the person must have resided in India or served the central government for a certain period of time.
We have to find some solution. Those people are living for 12 years or maybe longer period. But if you don't find a solution, what will happen? They will be just languishing on the pavements, on the roads and so and so, without any proper education, without any proper employment. So if a person does not get the proper education, proper employment, what he will do? He will become a part of the anti-social elements.
The Citizenship Law of 1955 provides for acquisition of Indian citizenship by birth, irrespective of the nationality of parents. Descent if father was a citizen at the time of his birth, besides registration, naturalization and incorporation of territory under certain circumstances. It allows a person born in India on or after 26 January 1950 but before 1st July 1987 to be a citizen. Any person who is not an illegal migrant can make an application to the center to register as a citizen.
Under the existing regime, there was no provision whereby a person who had crossed the borders sometime back, way back, could not get a citizenship of our country. Now, this shortcoming has been actually made up in this present amendment by bringing up these provisions for amendment. Namely, those provisions wherein those people who had actually gone across the border sometime back can now come back to India. If they can show the proof that they were actually Indians by birth, they can get the citizenship of India under the new act.
A citizenship can be terminated either by renunciation or acquisition of citizenship of another country. It is a voluntary act by which a person, after acquiring citizenship of another country, gives up his Indian citizenship.
The Citizenship Bill 2016 seeks to help the migrants of almost all religion except Muslim from neighbouring countries to acquire citizenship after 7 years of stay. India allows minorities from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan to stay without papers. Nishtha Malhotra with cameraman Munish for Rajya Sabha Television.
Indigenous communities in the northeast have been agitating against this bill. They feel that this bill is likely to dilute their status even further. Upamanyu, what I want to understand from you is, so as of now, the illegal immigrants in northeast are of the Muslim community. Majority of them. So now this bill allows the other communities to acquire citizen legally. The Muslims came in illegally, correct? And the identification is on. What is the resistance of the indigenous people of Northeast to this bill? Because this bill talks of the other religious denominations other than the Muslims who have already infiltrated.
You see, the identification is as far when we took
not on the identification, on the other religious entities being allowed in.
All right, let me put it this way. We already took the burden of 23 years of illegal migrants by entering into the Assam Accord up to 2071. Any further accretion is only going to add to the existing burden. So therefore, the question of anyone who does not belong there, who otherwise ought not to have been there, according to, and mind you, when we signed the Assam Accord of 1981 saying that up to 2071 we will accept all those who came in, it was a clear understanding that post 71 all those who come in have to be, do not have any place there. So suddenly now, when you are doing something like this doesn't matter. But I would put it a bit differently. I would say that today, that is only one aspect of it. I would say that today, and I go back to what I had said at the outset, we have to give priority to, because today you have to take a holistic picture of the whole thing. What the central government does, it may very well do. We cannot. So
what you are suggesting is, barring the indigenous the people, no migrants of any denomination should be allowed. That's the point.
That's one.
And that's what you are agitating against.
And two, in addition to that, because today we have to have measures in place to ensure that we do not become a minority. There are 3 independent studies which say by 2040, 2050 and 55, Hindus become a minority if you include indigenous Muslims by 2060-65. But by 2060-65, at the outside we become a minority. So therefore, we first have to take measures which address that situation. Correct. And the entire exercise over here by the central government is in ignorance and is dehorse whatever is happening over there. So
you would like to add to that, because this is the Northeast indigenous people have been agitating against this, and that's the community.
No, I think that question, I think the Prime Minister also spoke about it. I'm sure he also said that the Northeast should not share the burden of people who are coming across. And I'm sure the government will also come up with a scheme to ensure that people who are coming across and are settled in different parts of the country. I think that was discussed also. Okay. So it's not only about...
but there are no provisions in the amendment that
at the present moment, I'm sure that there will be, because a person who comes across also will then have to be rehabilitated. How they are rehabilitated, I'm sure they will be then rehabilitated across different parts of the country. And I think there is enough economic development in India at the present moment, whether that be in Delhi here or in Bangalore, for them to be accommodated. So I don't think that should be too much of a problem. And Mr. Hazarika will also agree that there's been largely an outbound sort of migration out of the Northeast also. So I'm sure that, you know, even these people who come across, at least from Bangladesh, that's what he's indicating, the issue in Bangladesh, can be accommodated anywhere else. As for the question of Pakistan and from Afghanistan, I don't think it's relevant to the questions which are being raised by Mr. Hazarika.
Correct. So there are two other countries, which means Afghanistan and Pakistan. They're migrants.
And those migrants, you know, you can see around you. You can see the horrendous conditions they live in. You can see that they have come across and what is the condition of religious minorities.
Yeah, their status is really poor.
Where the minority minister gets shot, where the governor, when he speaks about minority rights, gets shot.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very horrible situation.
But recently Pakistan passed a minority...
they passed an amendment to the Hindu Marriage Act. But I don't think, again, because you have any sort of legislation, it actually works on the ground. And Bangladesh is an example which we have seen very apparently, where we have a secular government, where we have a government which ostensibly is trying to change things on the ground and which is implements minority protection, but we have seen actually the huge amount of discrimination and violence which is directed against religious minorities.
So what you're saying is that the thrust of the bill is completely different and the implication is being made out to be something else. That's where the Northeast. So it's not just about Northeast, it's about the whole of India.
It's about the whole of India.
And since Bangladeshi migrants, that's the burden that Northeast is kind of apprehensive about.
Yes.
So that needs to be factored in.
That has to be factored in, and I'm sure the government is going to come up with a response which will solve the problem. I'm sure the government is also aware that the nature of Northeast being as such, it's a very sensitive place.
Indigenous people need to be protected.
And they're a sensitive place. And the government is aware of that. And the Prime Minister, and I think the government has also made statements which said that we will ensure that some states don't bear the burden individually. And there are other people who can.
Last word, Upamanyu, quickly. Anything you would like to add?
Well, I would say that we need to proactively address issues in the Northeast. And I would say the citizenship by birth issue, since the citizenship bill is being taken up for amendment, the citizenship by birth for post-1971 progeny of post-71 migrants ought to be taken up by this bill also, in this by the select committee and by the government. And secondly, the government should, as Vikramjit said, should ensure that that we do not bear the burden of the additional migrants who may be granted citizenship by virtue of the new amendment.
The select committee, I'm sure, will be able to iron out these issues, and representations have been made there.
We've also given a 17-page representation.
Moving on, my colleague Nishtha Malhotra spoke to Mr. K.J. Rao, former advisor, Election Commission of India.
Sir, what impact will the citizenship bill have on the citizens?
Definitely it will have an impact because the population is increasing day by day, Indian population. Besides that, they have to take into consideration all these illegal migrants, and that is not a small number, I think. It will be in huge, it will be huge, I am telling you, particularly in northeastern states, West Bengal, for example, and Punjab, these border areas, they will have the impact, and they have to bear the brunt of it.
The bill empowers central government to cancel the registration of overseas citizens. Why?
That is one way, it's because they are going to settle down there. Na? That is why their intention is they have gone on passport, they have gone abroad, and they don't want to come to India. Then what is the use? Giving them Indian citizenship, and he will continue there and make all the money and keep the money there itself. So just if he is going to come back, then all right, you have the Indian, and give the Indian citizenship. Otherwise, what is the purpose?
Thank you, sir, for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the RSTV page of YouTube. We'll be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Raj Sabha TV.